As Mark Willesee mentioned, the people of Japan are tensely watching the unfolding nuclear crisis in the nation's Fukushima complex. To get an understanding of exactly what's going on, I spoke earlier to Dr John Price in our Melbourne studio. He's a former member of the Safety Policy Unit of the UK's National Nuclear Corporation. Dr Price, for the layperson, can you give us a sense of how serious this situation in Japan is?
Okay, well, the issue we've got at the moment is we have to cool the reactor's core, and at the moment it appears that the situation may be stable in 1 and 3 Daiichi plants, but in number 2 there still seems to be some problems, or there was earlier today anyway, and the problem is that it's not being cooled properly.
Okay, so what happens if they can't cool that properly?
Well, it means that the reactor heats up, and well, I think the next stage actually is it blows off its safety valves. Now, they're probably trying to avoid that because that may result in some release of radiation.
Is it possible to know how much radiation could be released from that?
No, it's not, because on the fuel, there's cladding. There's a sort of metal cladding around the fuel. And the critical thing in the terms of the safety at this stage is that stays intact. Now, they have reported it being exposed or not underneath the water. So the question is, has it been cracked and damaged at that stage? So the problem is that there may be now particles of radioactive material in the water in the reactor, and so blowing it off, well, it blows off through a thing called a suppression chamber, but blowing it off may not be the best answer. They're trying to avoid it.
So what sort of threat does this pose to human health?
Well, it's impossible to tell. I mean, at the moment, very little indeed. If they can recover it from this situation, there'll be really nothing of any significance. However, I mean, if you go into much bigger scenarios where there are releases of particles and so forth, then you get into a different situation. And
what sort of a situation would that be? What would that involve?
Well, that just involves then the question of where the particles go, and they're borne by the wind, and they go around. But this situation hasn't occurred yet.
So, what would you do if you were living in Tokyo, for example, at the moment? What would you be doing?
I don't think Tokyo will be threatened. I don't think I'd be worried about Tokyo, but I think I certainly endorse the exclusion zones.
So what do you think the authorities in Japan need to do now to contain the risk of the spread of radiation? What are their options at this point?
Well, my hope is that they will actually, the reactor number 2, they'll start saying it's under control. We've actually submerged the core, and that will be the end of in some ways, the end of the difficult incident. Though, of course, from now on, it's unlikely that these 3 reactors will ever operate again. And that's the sort of outcome we're looking to now.
Given that it's unclear whether or not that number 2 reactor is actually under control, what are the things that authorities would be considering doing to bring that under control?
They have to use the controls in their disposal, which we don't know entirely. But there was something this afternoon where they said that they were withdrawing their people from the site. That's because I think 7 people have been injured on that site by falling masonry or something in the last few days. So they're withdrawing their workforce from the site, but there's still 50 people who will then be in a reinforced bunker, a reinforced control room at some distance from the plant.
In the past, has Japan had a good or a bad reputation when it comes to its safety record and its transparency around its nuclear facilities?
In terms of safety, it's been terrific. In terms of availability, the plant's been terrific. I can't comment on the other one. I understand there's some questions about how fast they're reporting everything right at the moment, and certainly things are being lost in translation and getting confused on the way.
Dr John Price, thank you very much for making time to speak to us tonight.
Thank you very much.